Hey guys, and welcome back to the Outer Rim. My name is Gabe, and today, with the help of these two fine gentlemen, we'll be talking about the latest episode of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And here with me today is Curry from the A Certain Point of View show. Welcome.
It's good to be here.
And then joining us again is Ryan from Pop Americana. How you doing?
Yeah, great. Wish I could be here under better circumstances.
Oh, and it begins.
Just start right now, yeah.
So it begins.
All right. So as I said, we're talking about part 4 of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Let's just move right into it. This is again directed by Deborah Chow and written by Joby Harold and Hannah Friedman. In this one, Obi-Wan pursues Reva and Leia to the Fortress Inquisitorius, just an awesome name, and rescues Leia. And that's pretty much all that happens this episode. Let's start with I guess probably we'll start with the most positive voice here. I'm suspecting you, Curry. What did you think of this episode?
You see, it was funny. I was talking with some of the other guys, and I was like, do I have to go on this week? Because this was my least favorite one so far, personally. I still liked it, still enjoyed it overall. It's Star Wars. It's Obi-Wan. He's one of my favorite characters. I have been a fan thus far. I love the first 3 episodes, and I'm sure we'll get into the nitty-gritty of that. But I just thought this episode should have focused more on the character development aftermath of the previous one with that whole encounter. And I kind of feel like they sidestepped that to really have like a action-heavy, plot-focused episode that didn't really accomplish much. There's subtle things throughout that I noticed on my second time through, but I was a little disappointed that we didn't get more from it, especially considering there's only 2 more episodes, and I feel like they've got a lot to wrap up. So I was hoping for a little bit more progression. But I still enjoyed it overall. Just a few more nitpicks this time, if that makes sense. Yeah.
And you, Ryan?
I kind of have the opposite take, but not because I like this episode. It's my favorite so far. In part because look, I mean, I'm not gonna go to bat for the filmmaking here, but in part because, like, in a way, as far as like continuity and lore is concerned, the damage is done. So it's like, with that baked in, I was just able to take in what was happening instead of having to be like, oh no, why would you make this horrible story decision? And look, it's pretty bland direction. The plot is ridiculously straightforward, and of course not much happened in this episode, but I was freed from the if you've been following anywhere on the discussion group, you'll know I have my fair share of problems with the way this show has constructed its narrative within the scope of the larger canon. And with those questions now, I mean, not really behind us, but with those kind of baked in, I was able to take this episode for what it was.
So you're in the acceptance stage of your grief over this show?
And no, I'm just trying to be, though.
Yeah, so for me, if you haven't watched the previous 2 reviews, I'm just kind of coming to the opinion that this is going to be kind of a nothing show for me. Like, things happen. There are elements I like. There are elements I strongly dislike. But overall, it's just, I feel nothing. It's just kind of neutral, which is definitely a disappointing place to be for Star Wars. As far as this episode in particular, I almost agree with you, Ryan, but then there were a lot of little nitpicks I noticed on my rewatch. Sure. And like, am I neutral or am I negative? I'm somewhere in that area. And yeah, I building off of what Curry said, I feel like this show is now just playing the Mandalorian season 1 and 2 arcs on fast forward. Like, oh, child kidnapped, go rescue child. Child captured again. Go rescue child again. And we just reached the season 2 finale in 4 episodes. And then speaking of dealing with ramifications, my favorite episode in The Mandalorian is after Grogu gets captured by the Dark Troopers, and then we have a whole episode which just character focused on Mando and Bill Burr. And it's just like this show has, and the Mando is not the most character set focused show. It's pretty pretty light on the character, but it does its work. And I feel like this show in its entirety has just been so plot driven. Like in the first episode, we're already leaving Tatooine. We open the series not with Obi-Wan but with the Inquisitors. It just feels like they have to just get through a series of plot points that they kind of are forgetting to tell a story, or just don't have time to deal with this character. Like we open this episode with Obi-Wan in the bacta tank, and he kind of comes out, and Tala tells him like, "No, you're not healed," and then he's just walking around and he's fine. His injuries never have any ramifications for the episode. And they're in the spaceship flying to the planet, and he's struggling to move this little piece of metal. And then at the end of the episode, he's holding back the entire ocean, and there's no progression. Like, this is a scene, this is another scene. They contradict each other, but there was nothing to get. Like, story is little, seeing the steps that a character takes to bring them from one point to the next. And I feel like this show is either just only giving us those steps in like the most basic dialogue where the characters just explain their feelings, or it's just skipping them entirely. And so what we're left with is a whole lot of plot. And the thing is, we've seen the good guys break into an Imperial fortress to rescue a prisoner 37,000 times in Star Wars. Like, every other week in Rebels was this plot.
Yeah.
And
to the point where Imperial security is a joke.
And
Seriously.
I feel like every other version we've seen was either just a little bit better or a lot better than this version. So it's like, I'm not someone who demands something new every time I watch a show, especially Star Wars. Star Wars is a pastiche. Like, so I love the way they can remix classic tropes. But if you're going to remix a classic trope, you got to do it well. Like, you got to excel at the technical aspects and just good writing. And I feel like this show has never excelled beyond competent, and a lot of the time it's below that. I've talked for a while. How are you guys feeling about that aspect?
I don't know if you want me. I don't know if you want me to respond yet. I'm just kidding. I'm sad that I disagree with you, I'm sad that I agree with you a lot about this episode in particular. I disagree with you about the previous three. I think that there's been a lot of subtle nuance in character moments, especially in the first episode. But this was really the chance to have that slow down, real character focused episode. I mean, look at Book of Boba Fett. They milked the heck out of the bacta tank flashback thing. So I half expected to see that here with like a flashback with Hayden Christensen. Because like he's wounded, he's damaged, like in so many ways beyond just physically. It's really a chance to explore like what that encounter was. However you feel about it or not, it was really a chance to explore that. So I agree in the sense of, instead of that, we get a rescue mission again that is very similar to, like you said, 37,000 other times it happens in Star Wars. I mean, breaking into an Imperial facility, like how many movies is that featured in? Like, just in the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy. So there's that. I will say I agree. And in my personal review, I mentioned like he struggles to move that little thing, and then he's deflecting blaster bolts and doing all these crazy things by the end, holding the water back, which I feel like they only put that in as a callback to Jedi Fallen Order. Have y'all played that game by chance? Because that's the same. That's the Inquisitor base that you go to. It's the final level.
Speaking of a rescue mission to an Imperial base.
Yeah, same thing. Same place, actually. So we've literally seen this before in a whole, like this whole area.
Tighten it up. They need to tighten it up in there.
Yeah. But anyway, in that, Cal Kestis busts open. This is a little bit of a spoiler, I guess, for the game. I can stop if you don't want me to. Anyway, somebody has to hold back the water in the same manner in that game. So, like, we've literally seen that before. I have heard the argument, and I noticed it a little bit on second watch, is that Obi-Wan, like, is fighting more throughout the episode, and the longer he does it, the better he seems to be getting at it. And I'm like, okay, I can see it's like he's practicing, he's warming up, whatever. I just don't think the episode goes out of its way to really emphasize that and let the viewer in on that. So I struggle with it a little bit. That being said, it's Obi-Wan doing a rescue mission to save Princess Leia, so there's still fun to be had there. I just was looking for a little bit more in this particular episode.
Yeah, and then like the ideas are done in the most rote way you can do them on film, and like which is kind of sad because the director here is actually capable of much better, and I've seen that like Mandalorian. She did a phenomenal episode of Better Call Saul, which starts with an amazing character centric montage. And Gabe hit on something that's been, I think, my biggest problem with the series so far is it is plot driven when you have one of the most charismatic and interesting characters in Star Wars right in front of us, and you chose to do a plot centered rescue mission instead of a character drama. And
a character who just went through one of the more traumatic moments of his life yesterday.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, and it's like the direction they chose is just not only for the series but for this episode is not ideal. And then like I try to give critiques, like if I was going to fix something, I try to take the premise on the table, right? So if you're going to do this cool rescue mission, fold character into it in a more interesting way than, oh, he's slowly getting better at the Force again. You know,
Yeah,
like
I agree with that.
and like if you're going to do the whole cracked holding back the water thing, put the camera on the other side of that glass. Let us see a broken, refracted Obi-Wan through that glass. You know, like anything more interesting than just it's slightly down the hallway from him, you know? So you can see that the stormtroopers who are, I mean, it's a meme, of course, and, you know, I'm not asking that he be shot or anything, but increasingly inept, you know?
Yeah.
And that's another factor that I think is a bit at issue here. Yes, Obi-Wan Kenobi is a general of the Clone Wars, and on his best day, an entire battalion of stormtroopers is not going to phase him. But if you're selling me the narrative that he's struggling to move a rock at the beginning of this, you can't have him surrounded on either side of the hallway, standing in the middle, not taking cover, and managing to block every blaster bolt successfully, and say he's struggling. It's just confused, I think. And, you know, I take what I can get at this point because, you know, I'm never against seeing blaster bolts reflected by a lightsaber. That's never not cool, but
yeah, I think you hit on one of my bigger issues with the episode. Is the action was just staged a little awkwardly this time. For me, it's not that it was terrible. I did think that though. It's like, okay, there's like an awkward pause between blaster bolts, and there's just some weird things that I think could have been saved in editing. And that's kind of like my biggest nitpick with some of the weaker parts of the show so far is editing. I don't want to cause a derailing part, but like the chase in the first episode, like we all laugh about it, right? It was bad. It could have been saved in the editing room. It could have been shortened and tightened and really fixed. And I just think there's some weird choices there that makes it feel off at times. In this episode, particularly the chase scene aside. I will say though, another thing is like he's struggling to. I don't know if they're trying to get it across that he's struggling to maintain his connection with the Force, and he's like letting his attachments and his pain distract him from it, because he did save Leia from falling, and he like really struggled to do it. So I don't know if he was like testing himself when he was moving that thing, and then maybe just the adrenaline of the moment. I could headcanon it and mental gymnastic, like defend it to death if I needed to, but I shouldn't have to. You know what I mean? And I hate that I'm saying this because I've been such a staunch defender so far. Like, y'all would have been so annoyed with me on the other end of the spectrum the first 3 episodes. I love the standoff with him and Vader. I love the direction of the show. I love everything it does. I don't think it messes with canon at all. I think it was a great way to approach it. And I'm saying a bunch of things to trigger you on purpose. So when you guys are talking about that, it's amazing that everything you say is wrong. But this episode, I was like, yeah, I didn't think it was terrible, but I feel it a little bit.
Well, real quick, our friend Michael Hoover just said, I can't stick around, but I agree with Curry. Yes. Whatever.
And hey, that is actually somewhat rare. Michael and I are known. Well, when we agree, it's great, but when we disagree, it's passionate. So.
Okay, speaking of disagree with canon, I have had the hope throughout these first 3 episodes that, okay, I guess set it up. I don't like that Leia and Obi-Wan are meeting and going on this grand adventure together and, becoming fast friends. Like, because when you go to A New Hope and she sends him that message, it's very formal. There's no indication of any that they have met or there's any relationship. Like, the only relationship she quotes is, years ago, you served my father. Like, it's very much, you were a friend of my father, so I'm begging you. And just, if you're watching that, you can't see the history that they're showing here at all there. So I wasn't a fan of them being together. So I was like, okay, maybe, just maybe, since he introduced himself as Ben, she doesn't actually learn he's Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then this episode, Reva straight up tells Leia that he's Obi-Wan Kenobi. So that little bit of hope that another element of canon wouldn't be a kind of pinched has been taken away from me.
And the thing about that is, if your version had stayed true, it sort of would have made sense that she was formal about Obi-Wan Kenobi, and then in the prison cell, when Luke says, "I'm here with Ben Kenobi," she perks up with Ben Kenobi. Like that, mm-hmm. that could work for me, And like Curry said, you don't want to have to do the mental gymnastics to make stuff like that work.
I think it's really easy to in this case, though. Like I feel like focusing on that is focusing on the wrong thing, personally. Because, yeah, she says, years ago you served my father in the Clone Wars. That's still true, right? She was in a really tense situation. All right, here's the mental gymnastics. She was in a really tense situation. Like, honestly, I think that's so dismissible. And there's so many things between the prequels and the originals. And don't even get me started on the originals and the sequels that
we don't like those either.
I thought Gabe was a sequel fan.
Oh, we don't like the issues that they create.
Discontinuity is an issue for any case. Like, we've had to live with the prequel stuff for decades. But.
I don't think we never see Leia and Obi-Wan interact in A New Hope.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's okay. And the series isn't over. I don't know if they'll do something. They'll do like a Superman 2 memory wipe. I don't know. But
I saw a meme where from Revenge of the Sith, where Bail Organa is bringing C-3PO, have the protocol droid's memory wiped, and they pasted Kid Leia's head on top of him.
You're gonna have to get Obi-Wan a little bit too, because he doesn't remember owning a droid.
Technically, they were Anakin's, so he's right.
He had R4 for the whole dang Clone Wars.
Yeah, but Obi-Wan was an attachment, so he wouldn't have owned anything.
The Jedi owned him.
See,
you saw how sad he was when R4 died in Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
Just not at all.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fair.
R.I.P. He was the real MVP.
All right, so what are some things that you enjoyed about this episode, Curry?
Yeah, so I really, story issues possibly aside, just looking at Leia, I think the actress, what is her name? I'm not familiar with her name.
Vivian Lyra Blair?
Okay. I think she's doing a great job. She really captures that Anakin/Padme energy for me. Just when Reva, I keep saying her name wrong. When Reva's trying to like mind probe her or whatever and steal the information, and she's like, "Is this a staring contest?" Like, just the sass and all. I think she's a lot of fun. I thought it was actually great to see Kenobi fighting again and like in action. When it comes to that kind of thing, I'm a little bit easier to please. It's fun. Not that I didn't have nitpicks, but I really like that. I love the scene with Vader at the end. I thought he was super intimidating when he walks in. He's like, "You've failed me," or whatever he says. Classic Vader stuff. Just anytime Vader's on screen, I'm going to be happy because he's my favorite Star Wars character. Kenobi being second, so you can maybe understand why I'm so excited for this. those are just a couple things right off the top of my head, as well as I really appreciate, and this is kind of a outside the story thing, just the fact that they're treating the video games as like equal canon. There's been so many references. Mandalorian had references to Battlefront 2's campaign. This is referenced Fallen Order several times. When Lucasfilm has been so fast and loose with retconning books and comics as of recently, or in the past couple of years, really, it's nice to see it be consistent when they tout that everything is connected and it's all one canon. It's not tiered canon when it really is. It's nice to see them be consistent here for once, with the exception of the appearance of certain characters like the Grand Inquisitor. But we're not going to go there. Which, by the way, he better. I'm pretty sure he's going to come back. The writer pretty much said so, but that's one plot point I don't like. Like, why even fake kill him off when we know he's alive in Rebels and dies there?
Also, he's just so much of a better villain than Reva. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, I do struggle with her too, to be honest with you.
Okay.
But I don't want to go into the. I don't want to change the conversation. But
I think it's relevant.
I'll go there now.
Okay. All right. I didn't want to derail, but
I was already just kind of not feeling her character. I think mostly down to Moses Ingram's performance. And then they made the choice to have her spend this entire episode getting bested by a 10-year-old. And they cut back every 5 minutes like clockwork. They cut back to her scene of her trying to outsmart a 10-year-old and being defeated and getting increasingly frustrated and rageful. And it's like, I'm sorry, this is not how you make a character intimidating.
Yeah.
Just like they it's already was a weak character in my mind, and the writing did her so few favors this episode. Mm-hmm. The one thing I do like about this episode was I like that she was able to spin. Like, I'm pretty sure they genuinely escaped. Like, I don't think she let them go on purpose, but the way she's able to spin for Vader, well, I put a tracker on them, so it was on purpose, and it's okay. Like, that's kind of a fun, clever kind of Star Wars thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's about it. That's all I liked.
Yeah.
I think
Go ahead, Ryan.
I'm so sorry.
No,
I think that's kind of the story of this show, though, is that they're thinking of benefit and never cost. Like with the Leia thing, they're thinking about building Leia. They're not worried that they're tearing down Reva to do so. Just like with this Anakin Obi-Wan rematch, they're thinking about hype and drama, and they're not thinking about the mental gymnastics you have to go through to make the existing canon work with that encounter. Like, so much of this show is, oh, this would be really cool, look at all the benefits, and ignore all the cost of what we're doing. And I think that really hits with the interrogation scenes, because it is almost like Scooby-Doo villain level getting foiled by those darn kids and their stupid droid. It's just, it doesn't work for me. It doesn't make her intimidating, and that they somewhat save that with the tracker thing, but it does feel super afterthoughty. Like, I don't know. Would she rather they escaped, or would she rather they have caught them and still got the information out of Leia? Like,
and these are things that I feel like if a director should be discussing with their actor as they're crafting the performance, so when you go back and rewatch, you can see, oh, she was plotting something there. She had kind of a look in her eye, like there was a long glance, like little subtleties. The show's never heard of that word, that you can do in performance and in direction to set up twists like that, or things like I think what they're doing with Reva is trying to soften her for some kind of redemption arc. Like, I think it's pretty clear she was one of the Jedi younglings in the beginning, and she'll probably turn on. Maybe she'll stay a villain to the end. I'm not sure, but it seems they're trying to soften her here, giving those moments with Leia. but I don't think it's just it's not there in Ingram's performance. She's playing it so straight, and so on this just I want this information from you, Leia, right now. We don't have a lot of the little pauses, the moments of concern, the moments of regret that I think we would need to so I could point to it and say, oh, like if you look at that thing, maybe it means this. It's just all it's all the surface level. I feel like.
And it would be better, in my opinion, if the Grand Inquisitor was still around to give pressure to that performance, but to play off of one another.
And that's why I think his presence in the first two like made me more forgivable with how she was, because I've struggled with her performance since the beginning. I think her character is fascinating on paper. I just think the execution is kind of inconsistent. I thought in episode 3 she was a little bit better. I was like, okay, I'm hopeful. You know, she has a moment where she touches the Jedi symbol on the wall, and then in this one, it's like you said, she plays it so straight. And I don't know if we're meant to think the way we're thinking. I mean, of course we're not, but in the sense of, I noticed on a second watch that she was very, very, very reluctant to hurt Leia. Like she had multiple times where she could have like forcefully tortured her, like Kylo Ren did to Poe Dameron. She could have like forced the torture devices sooner. She was very reluctant in like getting to that point, and like kept saying these idle threats like, "I hope you like pain," and all these things. So I'm predicting a redemption arc as well. I'm not sure what that looks like. I'm ready for some next step into that because I feel like they're dragging out just a little bit too long. And that all came to a head in this episode. And if that's the case and they reveal whatever her motivation or plan was, then maybe when we go back and rewatch, if you guys ever rewatch this, that like, oh, okay, we'll see the little things that they did insert that will help it make sense. I feel like these shows can be same thing with like the MCU shows. It's harder to judge them on an individual episode basis. It's easier to judge them as a whole season because oftentimes, especially with the MCU shows, they're just a 4.5 hour movie stopped at certain points. Like, and they throw a recap on the next part. It's a 45-minute act, and then they go to the next one. So I kind of am beginning to wonder if this would have been better as a binge model instead of week to week for this particular show. But I don't know. That's a whole nother conversation too.
I feel like Mando has been pretty easy to judge week to week because it's it's usually a different adventure, a different director.
Right.
Like they all
how it's built, it works that way.
Yeah.
But this is not that way.
Mando has more of the DNA of the animated Star Wars before, and this is more like the MCU shows in its structure.
Mm-hmm.
But even so, like there are arcs in Mando and in the animated Star Wars shows we have that are just micro versions of this, and maybe this would have been better not as a miniseries, but as a movie that was carefully considered. We have so much runway and not enough plane here. Like, I don't know where they're going with this, Yeah. And I mean, that's hard to judge right now, like you said, Curry. But right now, we've got a runway with a ton of potholes in it. I can't imagine we're getting this plane off the ground.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And also a movie which just had, I don't believe it would have had almost any of just the technical frustrations that the show has had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you kind of hit on something that I thought about a lot with this episode. This episode was noticeably shorter than the last 3. Like when you cut all the credits out, like every bit of it, recap and all, it's like 31 or 32 minutes. I may be off a little bit, give or take, but it's short. Like it's really short. And I'm a firm believer that an episode is as long as it needs to be. A film is as long as it needs to be, but there's room for error there. And personally, I think that given that so little happens in this episode, and there's a lot of wandering around hallways, a lot of sneaking around, I wonder, could this have been tightened up and added to another episode to make a longer episode? I don't know if you guys are Stranger Things fans. Like the most recent of that show, some of the episodes got a little long, but largely it worked. And that's a whole like different show, different structure. I get it. But either give us really tight, focused episodes and give us more of them, or give us longer episodes where it feels like more happens when it's a painful week-to-week wait. Like, make that wait worth it. And I just don't feel like this wait for this week paid off as much as it should have.
Honestly, I think the episode should have been longer. And like,
that's what I mean.
Everything is so easy.
Yeah.
Like, it is, I counted, it is 5 minutes from the moment the episode opens after the intro. It opens 5 minutes to where their ship is going into atmosphere over, is it Nur, the moon?
Yep.
And like, we're already here. We've already started the rescue. Like, the last shot of the last episode was Leia being captured, and 5 minutes into the next, we've already arrived to start the rescue. It's like, give us some time. And like, there are so many shortcuts taken. Like, O'Shea Jackson Jr.'s character, he's like, no, I can't help you. And like 1 minute later, look, if you want my help, you've got it. Like, you were so gung ho about not wanting anything to do with this, and then almost immediately you've joined the fight, and there was nothing to get us from point.
I didn't like that line either. Like, if you want my help, you've got it. Like, that was like okay, we need a line to wrap this thing up so we can go film the next scene. That I really felt that right there.
And then I feel like laziness. The whole thing of like, oh, there are no defenses because no one would be dumb enough to attack them. Well, if there are no defenses, it wouldn't be dumb to attack them, like as they show here. Like, when has there
twice ever, now in canon?
When has there ever been an Imperial base? When has there ever been an Imperial base that wasn't, covered in guns and crawling with TIE fighters? Like, make it more difficult. And like, they could have done the classic planning montage. Like, why even do a heist or breakout episode if you're not going to have a planning montage? Give us some cool steps. And like, they just made it so easy that you just kind of wonder, why bother? Like, all of the cool things you could have done are not done. And just how easy it was to escape in the end was just really irritating. Like, just have some TIE fighters flying after them and have that, classic race to get into light speed as they're trying to escape the planet. Spice it up. There's no spice here.
That's a good point too, Ryan, because this is like 5 years after Fallen Order, so that base has been attacked before. So thanks for ruining it a little bit more for me. I'm just kidding. But to clarify a little bit what I was saying, Gabe, that's what I'm saying. Either tighten it up. If you're going to go with it's easy, this isn't going to be a huge amount of time we're going to spend in this place, shorten it up and add it to another episode, or make it harder, make it more worthwhile to be its own standalone episode. Make it the Mission Impossible episode of Obi-Wan Kenobi, or whatever have you, whatever heist you want to compare it to. So that's more of what I meant. I don't know if I explained that properly the first time.
Or make it a buddy thing with Obi-Wan and Tala. Like, have them have like they did with Mando and Bill Burr. Like, have them conversations. And there's no conversations in this show. Oh, I guess there was some between Leia and Reva, but I don't like Reva, so it doesn't count.
Can I give my grand Obi-Wan Kenobi show fix plan? Like, I said earlier that I like, when suggesting corrections, to keep the basic premise on the table, so I'm not going to propose that they should have done something entirely monumentally different. But what I would have started this show with is Obi-Wan kind of in the opposite place he is at the start of the show. Like, make that hubristic conversation with Owen stick by having Obi-Wan be the one Jedi in the galaxy that just has not had the message sink in that you have to lay low now. Like, he got out of the Clone Wars in better shape than most Jedi, and in fact went on to confront the Empire's most deadly agent and came out on top. I'd have the reverse roles with the other Jedi that he found, where the other Jedi should have been the one to be like, no, you need to lay low. You need to bury this thing in the desert. And Obi-Wan kind of pep talk and accidentally caused this guy to out himself and be killed. And that should be what creates the reluctance to leave Tatooine to help Leia. And then have an episode in between where we're getting that reluctance out of the way. And then, rather than having him get to Leia immediately, take her, take her with the Inquisitors to begin with, because they're slated to be the enemies of the show, right? Make this mission be the final mission of the show, and give us some classic Obi-Wan episode 2 investigation into all of this. And then, like, I actually kind of like the premise that Leia would be the one thing that could possibly draw him away from Luke. But I like Gabe's idea of her not knowing that Obi-Wan is her savior here, because that preserves, at least to me and Gabe, it preserves the line in A New Hope about, because it does come across as really stiff. Like, if I'm sending a message to Obi-Wan after coming through this show, it would have been like, years ago you saved me in my hour of most need, and I'm calling upon you again. You know? Mm-hmm. It would be personal. It would not be detached and put off to her father. So we got to avoid that problem. And also, my hot take, keep the Grand Inquisitor around the whole show and don't bring Vader in at all.
Yeah, I'm very much anti-Vader in this show.
That take is hotter than the sand that's coarse and irritating and gets everywhere. No, I mean, I can sympathize with what you're saying, though.
Any other particular things that you really wanted to mention about this, Ryan? Anything at all?
Yeah, I guess I'll just summarize how I felt, which is the direction is stiff and feels perfunctory. The acting is hit or miss depending on who we're talking about. The plot was not advanced, but it's got less canon breaking stuff in this episode, so I'm able to just sit back and take it for what it is a little better than I have been the previous 3. So
yeah, I'm a chicory.
Yeah. If somebody asked me, like, hey, what did you think of episode 4? I would say it was fine. Like, it wasn't so awful I didn't have fun, but it wasn't so amazing like the first 3 definitively are. So I'm just going to keep throwing the salt. I can understand where people are coming from when they're concerned about it breaking canon or being harder to fit with the original trilogy. I really do. I think that's a worthwhile discussion and debate. I think there's a little bit of irony here between some of the complaints I'm seeing from certain people, not going to name any names, who love things in the sequel trilogy and love certain character decisions in the sequel trilogy, but are struggling with here. Like Ryan, for example, I don't want to like push back too hard on your idea for fixing.
Push him.
But I don't think the show would make a lot of sense if Obi-Wan was in a great place when it started, because then we don't see any kind of fallout emotionally, because he got it physically better in Revenge of the Sith, but emotionally he got it the worst pretty much of anyone. So we don't really see any ramifications from that, and I love seeing him Last Jediing all over the place in that first episode. And I'm one who kind of struggles with The Last Jedi. I don't think it's bad, but I'm kind of on a middle ground with it. However, all the hype that it built for me in those first 3 episodes, all the goodwill that it entrusted to me and how I eagerly defended, I lost some of that this week. And it's made me question how much can they get done in the next 2 episodes, since it feels like, I don't want to use the term wasted, but spent an entire episode on a plot-heavy but story-light mission that doesn't really accomplish much character-wise for anyone. And that's my biggest takeaway. I watch it with my wife. I always watch it first in the morning, try to get a review done, then I watch it with her in the evening. And I looked at her after it was over. So what'd you think? She's like, it was okay. I don't feel like much happened. I look at her and I get those opinions that I'm like, okay, I have this super crazy detail complex thing. Let me get like the opinion who's like casual fan. What did you think? And she had some similar thoughts as I did. So
going back to your jab about, whether or not we bring the same level of critique to, let's say, The Last Jedi, I think I will acknowledge part of that. There is definitely a thing where the amount you are willing to hand wave or to headcanon is commensurate to how much you are getting, how much value you see in the thing. Like if I am floored by the drama and I think the filmmaking is on point, a little weird logic flaw, but I don't care. I'm having so much fun. This is bringing me so much joy.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. And so, yeah, when I'm at a show like where I see very little value happening, I have so much more time to just think, but wait, why? Huh? What is this? So
Yeah.
I'll give you half that point. But I think there are a lot of problems here as well. And now comes the time for my rant about the filmmaking
Here we go.
for this episode. There are directorial choices, there are editing choices, there are things that just I do not understand how they happen in a big budget production. Like there is a legit audio mixing flub. Like it happens. It's one of Riva's lines, which is, "I give you my word," and there you can tell there are two audio tracks put together, and they didn't blend them. So there's this weird electronic audio spike in the middle of her saying "I," and it's like, how did you not find this?
I didn't catch that. I'll have to go back and look for it.
I have a clip. I'll forward it to you.
Yeah, please do.
And
It could be missed, but like by us, not by somebody with headphones on having to edit this in a bay for multiple hours. You know?
Right. Yeah, that's a solid point.
Yeah, I just sent it to our chat. And then like things like when Tala takes out the two stormtroopers after being arrested, and she just like lightly taps one, and he staggers across the whole room.
That was bad.
Another continuity error. It's not the biggest thing, but it's when Obi-Wan's holding back the water. He is right under that window, and then he goes and throws it at the stormtroopers. And it's behind the stormtroopers. Like it starts behind the stormtroopers, and he's like 30 feet away from it, running towards the door. It's like, and there's nothing, no time in between. It's just the distances are all weird. I think just the way she shoots the action is like she sets up like one camera towards the ceiling, one camera towards the floor, and wide angles, and then has like one camera doing this really shaky cam close up, and just runs through rehearsal like, good enough. It's just there's no refinement to it, and like if a certain motion wasn't sold as well as it could have been, they don't do anything about it. The camera never once that I could tell like accentuates the action where you're like, oh, I'm gonna move the camera with this move so it looks so much cooler. Like no,
is there a single pan? Like, is there a single pan in this episode?
Probably some, but like it's just like she just shoots some really basic coverage and they just move on, which I'm convinced this show had no schedule because I know she's better than this. Mm-hmm. Just when they're walking out in the hangar and there are like 100, 200 stormtroopers and officers around, and Obi-Wan he's an Imperial uniform, officer's uniform, but he's got a full beard, and there's very obviously a small human walking underneath his coat, and they're surrounded by people, and no one notices that this guy clearly does not belong here.
Is that variation of the uniform created just for this scenario? I don't think I've ever seen
the extra large Imperial coat.
Like
the overcoat, yeah.
Yeah, I could be wrong. Like I don't. Well, hold on. Because in Solo, Woody Harrelson's character,
he does wear
he's wearing a long coat too,
and he wears a similar cap, I think. So that's a good call. Yeah, I think you're right.
But still, like it's really obvious.
It feels like it was made for this gag. Like,
well, at least they didn't get away with it, right? Like,
yeah,
they are caught. So they almost did, but they didn't.
But they didn't get caught. Like Reba came in and saw, hey, that's Obi-Wan and Tala. Like they didn't even get caught. So just it feels so low effort, and for me, like that's not acceptable with Star Wars. Star Wars has, even with the prequels, and George Lucas was making a lot of the same mistakes. He was reaching for the stars. Technically, he was changing the way we've made movies forever. He made a lot of problems, but just like, but then we get to Disney era, and I feel like the 5 Disney Star Wars films are among, without a doubt in my mind, the best looking blockbusters that have been made in the last decade. The cinematography, the like Marvel when you go into a Marvel movie, you come in with the expectation that there are going to be a lot of CGI shots that look a little wonky. But okay, it's a lot of CGI. I forgive it. Those 5 Star Wars movies, I could count on maybe both my hands the amount of weak CGI shots in 5 movies.
And most
that
of that's from
does not
rewatching and
happen.
knowing it.
Yeah, and that doesn't happen with modern blockbusters.
Right.
Yeah.
And to go from that to this series where every episode I'm noticing not just sloppy filmmaking, but just actual mistakes. It's just Disney has the money. It has everything they need. And they've shown us some of those Mando episodes are pretty dang near flawless. And they're huge and epic, and some of those aren't as good, but like that show is operating at such a higher level in the show, and it's unacceptable to me that Disney Star Wars could be, I think, this shoddy sometimes.
Even on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Because like the Peyton Reed episode of Mando is CGI heavy, and I didn't feel taken out of that even once. Like, not like I have here.
Yeah, and Gabe, I think you make a really, really compelling point. I like I said before, I do think the first 3 episodes, as big of a fan as I am of them, I definitely think there's flaws. The chase scene being a prime example. There's a couple. This chase scene in the second episode, I think there's a couple of weird editing blunders. I've had editing blunders in each one that I felt more forgivable kind of stuff, because I still felt mostly it was directed fairly well. I thought, and it's weird to me because when her Mando episodes, and I could be misremembering, I feel like she directed the action super well in those.
The final shootout in the Sin, where it's like Mando versus like 50 bounty hunters, is really tightly directed.
Yeah. So I felt like, there's some mistakes, but I really like the angle of what she's going for. But here, it's almost like they rushed through this one to get through it. Like they had a tighter day, or like just not enough time to get all the shots they needed. So like, hey, let's just do a wide shot and we'll do a cross cut, reverse shot for a lightsaber. Anyway, this is where I was like, I'm reading your tweets and stuff afterwards. This is where I was like, I can see what he's saying, and I actually agree that there's a lot of weird blunders. And this is something I can't believe this happens so much in Hollywood productions. There's a shot, it's kind of an establishing shot with Reva and Leia in the like interrogation room, and there's just it's like a slider shot across the screen, and instead of it being this like smooth, like beautiful shot, it's like doing this.
Oh,
and those
which sliders will do, but
they do that all the time. But I'm like, man, I would get like fussed at if my like shot was a little, off or something, and like try to use warp stabilizer in Premiere afterwards and try to fix it up. And I'm like, they just let that slide. That was a super crazy.
They let it slide.
I remember that one.
Well, it's Disney, they have access to things we don't. Like this should
they could
should
get
be
a giant crane in there and do it if they have to.
It almost feels like they needed something to lengthen the story, which is why this one is like so short. I also have a hard time buying that they didn't have more in that back to tank scene to show. Maybe they're saving some stuff for later on. This episode just felt sloppier to me overall, and I do think you have a good point. I don't know if I would take it to the extent that you would, but I definitely would be more on your side in that case.
One other small positive I will say is I think the volume looks better inside this kind of Imperial base setting than it does like when they're trying to do like outdoors. There's been a lot of outdoor stuff. Like for me, having watched 4 seasons of show shot in the volume, I could almost immediately spot, that's a volume shot. I could see where the wall is exactly over there. But I didn't really have that problem this episode. Just the way it's lit, the way that the Imperial settings look.
Did you notice the one with O'Shea Jackson? Is that his name?
Oh, dude,
the volume
was
shot
that
there.
Green screen?
I don't know, because if that was volume, it looked bad. Because that was the only one I was like, what is going on with like the keying around his head? Because it just looked off to me, and
Mhm.
that was the first time I've really noticed it.
I
To be
think it
honest,
might have been green screen because I could swear I
yeah,
could see an outline.
yeah,
Um,
that was a
yeah.
weird blunder.
Yeah.
So, how are we feeling about this show going forward? Like, I'll start with you, Ryan. Just like, do you have any more hope? Do you like? What do you think? And do you? I think you'll. Just how are you feeling now that we're over halfway over with it?
I'm an eternal optimist, and so I always have a little bit of hope. But I feel like my fears for this show have been realized, and a couple fears I didn't even have going in have manifest. So, as I said earlier, we got a long runway with a bunch of potholes. I don't think they're really getting this plane off the ground for me. Maybe they hover a little bit, but I just don't see this making the pantheon of great Star Wars shows. And I could, as it constitutes right now, I could see myself if I was doing a comprehensive watch everything in Star Wars run through. I could see myself being very, very tempted to skip this, and that's the saddest thing I can say.
How are you feeling, Curry?
That makes me sad, Ryan. I feel so heartbroken now. Because and I tend to be an optimist as well. I like to say I'm a realistic optimist. This was the first episode where I felt a little nervous going forward. And as I mentioned earlier, there's 2 episodes left. If they're not the 55-minute run times, I'm concerned. It's kind of a two-sided coin concern. Is there enough story to justify 2 more episodes? And if so, they're going to have to really give us something compelling in this next one. Or are there too many plot threads to wrap up in just 2 episodes? Because the MCU shows are very guilty of rushed finales where too much is going on in the finale and it ends up feeling rushed. So that being said, 3 out of 4 so far is still really good for me. I think when the show chooses to focus more on the drama between Vader and Kenobi, which we know is coming, there's going to be fallout. We're going to find out more about Reva's motivations. I'm almost positive the Grand Inquisitor is going to show back up. I think this is kind of the calm before the storm. And what I'm hoping for you guys is that these next 2 episodes maybe can turn things around for you and maybe retroactively make the previous episodes better. Won't fix, some of the filmmaking issues, of course. But I don't know if you saw Andrew, I think his name's Andrew Stanton.
I'm looking at. I was going to mention that. I'm looking at his Wikipedia page right now.
He's writing the next 2, and he's a co-writer on the Toy Story films, or was he the lead writer?
Andrew Stanton is, in my opinion, one of the great writers. So he's got Toy Story, Bugs Life, Toy Story 2, Monsters Inc., Finding Nemo, WALL-E, Toy Story 3, Finding Dory, Toy Story 4. He's part of the Pixar brain trust. He's given suggestions for every Pixar film. So he's a good writer. He's a really good writer.
Right. And I think that this is a good time for that to come out in this show and really tie everything together, make people question and go, is this worth it? Is this worth rewatching? Is this worth doing mental gymnastics to justify A New Hope or what happens in A New Hope or whatever? And knowing his resume and just thinking about Toy Story and how heartfelt and dramatic those can be and making us care about these toys that come to life, and knowing that another Kenobi and Vader confrontation is coming, that gives me hope. So I'm still, of course, looking forward to it. And there's just enough in this episode to still make me hang on and dang it, I hate to have to wait another week. But at the same time, just a little bit nervous.
Yeah, so for me, as I'm feeling with this episode, and kind of once you're 2/3 through a series, you kind of probably know how you're going to feel when it ends. And for me, I'm as it stands, I will probably just kind of quietly shuffle this show to the side going forward and just not pretend it's not real canon going forward. Not going to be that super irritating guy they're not canon, but as far as my own personal watch throughs,
Right.
I don't think this is going to be something that I want to think about within the larger Star Wars story. Again, Andrew Stanton is credited for the next 2 episodes, and he's a good writer. And I think we've seen in Mando and the Book of Boba Fett, just like the difference in feeling. Like most of those episodes are written by Jon Favreau, and then Dave Filoni will come in and write an episode, and just it feels different. The way the characters, there's more dialogue, there's more themes woven through. Or when Rick Famuyiwa writes an episode, like you can feel the difference. So I'm hoping that with Andrew Stanton coming in, we can feel that, and when we have moments like Obi-Wan in the Bacta tank, instead of just cutting through it, they'll dive into it and give us more character stuff. Because like that is what this show has been entirely lacking for me. I just have not felt any of the character drama they've put forward. So I'm just hoping that. But even then, like, I don't I don't like the story this series has chosen to tell. So I can't accepting that I can enjoy it, I think, but even then, even if those 2 episodes are really good, it's not gonna fix the problems I have. So we'll see. You know, I do
describe the sequel trilogy in my eyes. I'm just kidding.
Don't even start.
Oh boy.
I'm just thinking all of my.
Yeah,
that's a future episode idea right there.
I have a very balanced view on the sequel. I'm a very much a middle guy. I can kind of go both ways.
I'm a 2/3 approve and 1/3.
Yeah. Well, I'm there too, but I've come a long way since they came out. I did want to share one cool thing about this episode that I forgot to mention until now. A friend of mine who I worked with for 6 months back when I worked in the church world. She was a communications director, and I was the video producer. She is an actress now, and she is in episode 4 of Kenobi, and she is going to be in episodes 5 and 6 too. She's an extra in the background. I saw her posted on her story. I'd have to go back and find the shot. I believe it's when they're on Jabim. She's like one of the people in the background.
That's cool.
And she told me she's supposed to be in episodes 5 and 6 too, so it's pretty cool. I'll send you all a screenshot of her in the show. Maybe you can look out for her next time.
That's pretty neat.
It is really
anything else at all you wanted to mention, Ryan, about this episode?
No, I think I've said all I need to say.
All right, then. So where can people follow you, Curry, if they want to check you out online?
Yeah, so they can follow me on Twitter. I don't do much on Twitter, so you'll probably be bored. But you can follow me or subscribe on YouTube. It's Curinator1. It's Curinator, like the Terminator. Sorry, bad joke. I'm a dad now. I can't help it. But I do movie reviews and some TV reviews, such as Kenobi, and trying to cover the Marvel shows now. So Curinator1 on YouTube. And also am a rotating guest co-host on a Certain Point of View podcast. So check us out there. We'll actually be live tomorrow night. I may or may not appear. I like to keep it vague just in case I can't make it. But we have a great time over there too. So it's been a pleasure to be on here. So thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. And Ryan?
Yeah, I want to echo that it has been a pleasure. I forget how much I miss this until we start doing it. But yeah, you can follow me at Pop Americana on YouTube, where we do in-depth film analysis. Right now we have, it must be 20 hours on the Lord of the Rings trilogy. That just finished.
That's it. That's amateurs.
Love it.
Look, our last episode was almost the length of Return of the King for the last fourth of Return of the King. So
Perfect.
we went pretty deep in that. Yeah, we also have our reaction. It was a live show for the Batman. That's there too. And our next project is what I think right now is slated to be a video essay on Steven Spielberg's Schindler's List. So I'm very much looking forward to that. That's I'm a bit nervous, which is not normal for me because that's a touchy subject and a very, I think, important film. So hold out there. It's going to take a minute, but I'm going to get that out as soon as possible. But also Pop Americana has a Facebook discussion group where we talk about all kinds of things going on in film culture and television culture. Right now, the big feature is James Hamrick's year-by-year poll for films. I think we are in the year 2000 right now, where you can vote for 10 of your favorite films from that year, and he tallies them up, and then we reveal what our picks for favorite movies each year are. So that's fun. Join us there. We'll discuss everything from Kenobi to, I'm sure, Jurassic World coming out here in a minute, and I'm sure that's shaping up to be every bit as divisive as Kenobi. So.
I mean, yeah, if we talked about Fallen Kingdom, there'd be blood on the floor.
Yes.
I actually haven't seen Fallen Kingdom. I'm going to watch it for the first time this weekend. It was one I missed in theaters. Kind of ashamed I haven't seen it.
It's definitely a movie.
I've heard mixed opinions.
It's a good
so.
one, but
yeah.
I disagree with Gabe on that, but that's a whole nother show.
Yeah. I can't wait to do an episode with you guys where I tell you how the best Star Wars movie is actually Revenge of the Sith. That'll be a fun one.
Ooh.
You can try.
I like it, but
you will try. I like it. If you're not with me, then you're my enemy, Gabe.
Exactly. So as far as me, you can follow me on Twitter at @franchisepod. I've kind of co-opted our podcast Twitter feed as my own personal thing. And also just check out Franchise Fatigue Podcast. Like, we've kind of discontinued it, but we have reviews for everything Star Wars up to like 2020. All the movies, all the shows, very, very in depth. So if you want to hear me talk about Star Wars more, you can go to Franchise Fatigue Podcast. As far as the Outer Rim, join us at the Outer Rim, a Star Wars group on Facebook for positive, constructive discussion of Star Wars. Follow us on Twitter at the Outer Rim, a Star Wars channel, and the same on YouTube. All right, and we should be back next week with episode 5. And until then, we'll see you later.